Recording. All right. Super. Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the Gateway Board of School Directors special board meeting for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would also like to let you know that this meeting tonight is closed to the public due to COVID-19. It is a Zoom meeting for the public. It will also be on television and on YouTube. Those that are present in the room with me are board members, Attorney Bruce Dice and Superintendent Dr. Short. Other administrators are also joining us via Zoom. At this time, Bonnie, could you give us a roll call?
Yes. Mr. Caleri.
Here.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Here.
Mrs. Delaney.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Gottman.
Here.
Mr. McIntyre.
Here.
Mr. Ritter.
Here.
Mrs. Warning. And Mr. Williams.
Here.
Okay, at this time, I would like to turn over our presentation to Dr. Short.
Would like to acknowledge that tonight we are meeting via Zoom and we are adhering to social distancing guidelines. We are spaced out within the boardroom 6 feet apart. So I did want to mention that to our viewing and listening audience tonight. As we know, tonight's meeting is to present our pandemic plan for reopening schools as required by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. It's important that our public community stakeholders understand that since the end of the 2019-20 school year, Gateway School District Administration has been planning for reopening while awaiting guidance from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Pennsylvania Department of Health, Centers for Disease Control, CDC, and Governor Tom Wolf's office. In order to facilitate the reopening of our schools, the mandated Pennsylvania Reopening Health and Safety Plan has been completed, posted to the district website, and will formally be presented to the board. Gateway School District's Reopening Task Force, made up of various educational stakeholders, spent countless hours reviewing all components of the plan, specifically measures in place to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of every student and staff member. I would like to personally thank everyone who has committed their time and efforts in reviewing, recommending, and carefully updating our Pennsylvania Department of Education, Health, and Safety Plan. To the students, parents, guardians, our work has always been and will remain committed towards providing a safe and equitable return to school for all students and staff. We must all continue to remind ourselves that we are in the midst of a pandemic, unlike anything that we have ever seen in our lives. We understand that there are many implications that come as a result of this pandemic. They include economic, childcare implications, social and emotional well-being of students, and of course, educational implications to the decisions being made in regards to our reopening plan. As a district, we are always monitoring notices from the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Governor Tom Wolf's office. Updates are fluid and at times open to interpretation and may require accommodations. Essentially, these plans presented and debated tonight will in all likelihood be tweaked as we move closer and closer to the start of the 2020-21 school year. Without question, children need to be in school. Learning is optimized when a traditional learning platform is established. We miss seeing our children and watching them grow academically, socially, and personally. It is my mission that we complete this journey safely. Thank you. At this time, Dr. Chakey and Dr. Rossi have a PowerPoint presentation that will outline the plan for health, safety, and welfare reopening of our schools. If we could have the slide presentation up on the active wall, please. Reopening of schools 2020-21, board meeting July 21st, 2020. Next slide, please. As I stated in 2 of our pandemic meetings, everything we do as a district ties back to the mission statement. The mission of the Gateway School District, in cooperation with parents and other members of the community, is to provide quality educational opportunities for all students to promote academic excellence in a safe and caring environment, to enhance self-confidence through personal responsibility, and develop lifelong learners who will be productive citizens in a diverse and changing world. Notice in italics, the safe and caring environment. It's essential to what we're doing. The reopening planning, as stated in my opening remarks, started immediately after graduation. Gateway School District administrative planning meetings were held weekly, not only at central office, but all through the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. Weekly superintendent meetings were held, along with multiple Pennsylvania Department of Education, Secretary of Education, Mr. Pedro Rivero, virtual meetings where superintendents across the region had an opportunity to ask important, vital questions to eventual guidance being released from the department and Governor Wolf's office. From those meetings, I was able to disseminate the information to our assistant superintendents and central office team to establish COVID-19 contingency planning meetings, which were held June 9th, June 16th, and July 9th. In addition, a pandemic planning team was coordinated with multiple stakeholders and parent surveys went out. More information to follow. Next slide, please. As stated in my letter sent out in early July, the PA phasing reopening guidance as released through the Department of Education and Governor Wolf's office mandate that when we are in a red phase, there is a stay-at-home order, strict restrictions based on CDC and PA Health Department guidance. All Pennsylvania K-12 schools will be closed. All students will receive virtual instruction, and that will come in the form of option 2 and 3 that will be presented soon. When we are designated yellow, the stay-at-home order is lifted, restrictions are eased. Schools can reopen at reduced capacity with guidelines from CDC and the health department. A blended learning model with in-person and online instruction will commence, and that would be option 1, 2, and 3 that we will discuss in a few moments. Within the green phase, further restrictions are eased while still maintaining social distancing guidelines. It's important to note that Gateway schools must adhere to the CDC, PA Department of Health, but also Pennsylvania Department of Education and Governor Wolf's office, who most recently issued mandates with the use of masks and 6 feet of social distancing. In-person teaching and learning while offering online instruction, option 1, 2, and 3 would be made available. And if appropriate, upon mandates being lifted, a return to school for a traditional 5-day school setting when restrictions are eased will occur. Ideally, hopefully this would occur recently after the beginning of school, but currently as we sit, we understand the position we're in. Next slide. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chakey, Dr. Rossi, as they can communicate the options available for families and present it to the board tonight for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Short. Starting off, taking a look at the academic options for our students and families. Some things have changed already between last meeting and this meeting. We took a lot of feedback from families, and basically we're trying to look at how can we offer the best educational setting, the best educational experience for our students within the restrictions that are currently out there. Option number 1 remains the blended learning model. That is the option that takes into account cohort A and cohort B. Option number 2, the Gateway School District Cyber Academy. This is the current Cyber Academy that's the partner with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit to offer an asynchronous student experience. And option number 3, the Gateway Academic Transitional Education. This option is going to be based upon total enrollment and parent-student responses. And we're going to go through each of these 3 options in the upcoming slides to give a better description as to the different elements of the educational experience. Some of the terms that we're going to use throughout the night on this presentation, we wanted to make all parents and families aware of. Synchronous refers to real-time virtual live instruction or face-to-face instruction. Asynchronous is not live instruction. We also wanted to note that Google Classroom, while it's going to remain as part of the learning experience, Google Classroom is merely a learning management system that's part of the G Suite, meaning it's not the actual instruction that's taking place. I mean, we understand back in the spring as we rolled out the online experience because of a response to the shutdown, the Google Classroom was put right into the forefront of everyone's homes, and we've been working to make it a better situation, a better learning experience for families. So Google Classroom will remain, but it's not the primary instruction that parents are or students are gonna be receiving. This blended learning model, this balances in-person learning and remote learning for all students. As we previously discussed, each school will be divided into 2 cohorts. Cohorts will be determined alphabetically. We also are going to make arrangements for all siblings within the district to remain in the same cohort or attending school on the same days. Our target date is August 10th for all families to receive cohort assignments. This is all option 1. Just to clarify it, to provide an example of the schedule, cohort A, if you have a student or a child that's in cohort A, Monday, they will attend school for face-to-face instruction from a teacher, their regular school day. We consider it to be a typical school day, a traditional school day with all the different restrictions. So essentially we're taking the Gateway Education Program and being able to cut the enrollment in half so that we can make accommodations that are directed from the state. For example, the 6 feet of social distancing and allowing some of these things to occur. Tuesday, your child will attend school, face-to-face instruction again. On Wednesday, there is virtual synchronous sessions that will occur throughout the day. So if your child is staying home on Wednesday for remote learning, this is going to be a day where they can connect virtually with the teacher. Teachers can post lessons online virtually on Wednesday. They can set up conference hours. If your child is struggling with a particular topic in mathematics, they can go on to the scheduled lesson that the teacher will be conducting either via Zoom or just in a conference format so that questions can be asked and the teacher can review that particular topic that the child may need a little bit of an enrichment from or remediation from the previous lesson. Now, Thursday, your child will be virtual asynchronous, meaning remote learning, working through some of the assignments and some of the topics through Google Classroom. And also Friday, the same situation, virtual asynchronous. So essentially alternating days with a lot of information, a lot of weight being placed on that Wednesday, because that's a day whenever they can have some virtual instruction, some live instruction from the teacher to discuss some of the curriculum and the content that is being delivered face-to-face on Monday and Tuesday. Option number 2, the Gateway School District Cyber Academy. Dr. Rossi has been working with Dr. Klinger in regard to not only this option, but option 3 as well. So Dr. Rossi, do you want to explain some of these aspects?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Chakey. Option 2 is our current program, our current cyber program, where we have roughly 100 students from elementary to high school participating in this program. Now, it is a traditional cyber program. For this particular program, we do partner with the Allegheny Intermediate Unit. They offer the asynchronous experience for the student. With this model, this option, there's no live instruction. It's really all digital, all virtual with teacher support. Again, all of our district's 1920 Cyber Academy students participated in this particular program last year. And this is still an option for those students and any other student who would or family show interest in this particular program. Typical schedule, it's really self-motivating, independent learning with the digital platform, and essentially it's all virtual and asynchronous with teacher support built in based on the teacher and student schedule. Now, option number 3, the difference between option 3 and 2 is that we will be providing synchronous sessions with a Gateway teacher. So the GATE program will include synchronous and asynchronous sessions with a classroom teacher at the elementary level or with a high school teacher in particular courses and subjects. Live instruction, we want to emphasize that. That was loud and clear in the parent surveys. Parents wanted live instruction, especially in math, and that will be provided in this option via Zoom or Meet. There's some flexibility with this option as well for the teachers to schedule those synchronous sessions. And again, we want to emphasize this will be with a Gateway teacher. So we go to the next slide. This is a sample schedule. And again, this will vary by teacher and by student, but this is what it can look like. You could see there are some all virtual sessions, synchronous and asynchronous, that can happen throughout the week. Reteaching, pre-teaching, remediation, enrichment can all occur based on the teacher and the student's schedule. So for example, what might that look like? We have a little diagram here, just an example. And again, this will depend on the course and the grade level. So on the left there, you see the teachers in class, 11 students. Of course, there'll be social distance in class. While we have some kids at home via Zoom. Again, this this option, this setup will be based on the teacher and student scheduling. Go to the next slide. Another option of this third option is where a gateway teacher may be delivering everything via Zoom or Meet in a virtual setting, and all the students are at home. And so just a quick summary of the options. You can see there the synchronous and the asynchronous and the 3 options listed.
Thank you, Dr. Rossi. So we also wanted to touch on some of the mitigation efforts in order to provide a safe and secure environment. Now, all of this information is placed right into the health and safety plan template that we put together for the district. Now, one thing that's important to note, we received this template from PDE, and there was a series of questions that we had to answer to. Some of the topics included the cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting. And we put all this information in there so that parents and families can understand just how thorough we're cleaning during each school day, but also some of the things that we're doing above and beyond to safeguard our students and staff. As you read down through, we mentioned the touch points with common spaces. It's important to indicate too that even though we're deep cleaning these common spaces, we're definitely going to restrict the use of common spaces. We're not going to put students in large spaces where they're going to be at risk. After school, the entire school buildings are cleaned and sanitized. Wednesday and weekends will be utilized for enhanced cleaning of all schools. Also, if you've been around the campus here, you see that in a lot of the buildings, in many of the rooms, we already have the individual hand sanitizers that are on the wall. Those are going to remain. We're also we're increasing the amount of those that will be on the wall around the campus. But more importantly, these sanitation stations that are going to be present within each classroom. It'll be an individual crate. It'll have items such as hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and face coverings, gloves, etc., where teachers will routinely remind students about the sanitation stations, and there will be time throughout the school day where students will be able to go over and use the hand sanitizer or take a disinfectant wipe or whatever they may need in order to sanitize the learning environment. The social distancing, the safety protocols, these are other questions that come to us as a district right from PDE. Now, it's important to note that one of the questions that we had to answer to the state was, how are we ensuring that all individuals are going to be social distanced at least 6 feet? They were very, very clear in stating this 6-foot option of having students socially distanced. And that came into play as we started preparing some of our plans. Like that is the reason why it was necessary to go to a blended model if we have students face-to-face in the building for instruction. Also, as a part of the expanded face mask order in Pennsylvania, students have to wear a mask anytime where social distancing is not 6 feet apart. When it is, then they can remove the mask. For example, eating or drinking or seated at desks, workspaces. If they can maintain that 6 feet apart, then they do not have to wear a mask.
And it's important to understand that if the regulations lessen to less than 6 feet, the plan would change at that point.
Bill, what's PDE? So for people at home know.
Desk and seating. It states when multiple students are in one enclosed space, such as a classroom, seat students at least 6 feet apart and facing the same direction to the maximum extent feasible. Those are the guidelines. If it would have said less than 6 feet, it would have stated so.
Other social distancing, safety protocols. We've walked through many classrooms. We have to make sure that the classrooms and the learning spaces allow for social distancing. That's going to be attained through removal of extra tables, some of the non-essential furniture, also installing plexiglass dividers, and also taking a look with principals and teachers about developing procedures to limit the sharing of materials. We've also outlined the need to formulate a plan for hallway travel, use of common spaces, although we mentioned that we are going to restrict the common spaces as the best we can. But I think maintenance department has done an excellent job in identifying some areas where we're going to have some signage for travel patterns and different areas of the campus or the buildings which may have one-way travel for students and staff. We've had a lot of questions around the area of special education. Ms. Bungard has been working diligently in this area, and she's going to mention a few items around special education.
Thank you, Dr. Shaky. Good evening, everyone. I just want to ensure all stakeholders over the past several weeks, the district has diligently worked to develop an appropriate plan to re-enter school in the fall. During these numerous meetings, special education was at the forefront, reviewing all aspects of the plan. At all times, the health and safety of all of our students took precedence. Special education is an individualized program, and while all details for each and every child cannot be written out in this plan, we are committed to working with families and students to ensure a free, appropriate public education. As you begin to review and determine the appropriate educational options for you and your family, the special education department will be available to schedule IEP team meetings to collaborate and discuss your individual child's needs and how he or she will be supported this school year. And the way that we're going to look at that is, as you can see on this PowerPoint here, the Gateway School District remains steadfast in its commitment to providing your child with faith. The considerations for the individual education plan team meetings will look at determining appropriate learning platforms according to the district options we're presenting here this evening. We'll review the student IEPs, including goals, accommodations, specially designed instruction, and programming. And we'll revise the IEP to reflect the necessary changes to the students' programming. Thank you.
Also had a lot of discussion around transportation. We know that students have face coverings, be socially distanced on each bus. Transportation schedule will run as a typical school day. Cleaning of buses, disinfectant spray done 2 times per day. Also touching on technology within our plan, all students will have a device in order to successfully engage in remote learning. As we mentioned before, Google Classroom will remain as the primary learning program. Also, Wi-Fi will be available upon request. So looking at the timeline, we anticipate July 23rd, a parent choice survey will be distributed. Now this is when you take a look at the different options and you decide what is best for your family. By August 3rd, the parent choice survey is due back to the district. August 14th, families will receive their cohort assignments for your child. We anticipate the week of August 24th to the 28th, virtual parent information sessions with principals. And we're also proposing, based on board approval, pushing back the start date for the school year to the September 8th to give students and families a little more time to think about each of the options and to get further communication out to members of the school community. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Ms. Cerrucci.
Okay, this time I'd like to go through some of the questions that were related to the presentation, unless you want me to take board questions first. Any board members have questions?
I think if we go through some of the questions, I think we have as a group, I
Okay,
think we're going to knock out a lot of the questions that are coming in from the public.
all right,
Do we
let's,
still have the plan posted up in the boardroom so our board can reference it if a question does come up?
okay, the first question is about GATE teachers. Will they be the same set of teachers as normal in-person instruction or a different set? Can you expand upon the teaching staff for option 3?
Dr. Rossi, do you want to start with the answers and then I can add or assist you as we talk through this?
Sure. Well, that would all depend on the grade level and course. Let's just say it's an elementary. If we get an overwhelming amount of people, families who want option 3, then we may have virtual teachers just teach those students, but it will be a gateway teacher.
Essentially, in option 3, we would be looking at a gateway teacher, whether or not that's the elementary, middle school, or high school teacher, virtually, asynchronous, or synchronous combined.
Okay, regarding GATE, is it the same curriculum? Yes.
Yes.
For one and 3.
For 1 and 3, correct. Pacing would be the same. Resources, as an example, Super Kids, reading resource ELA in grades 1 and 2, yes. We have the Pearson platform, which has changed names, but it's the same platform. That teacher within the GATE program would still be accessing all those materials and resources and would be instructing the kids on the same pace, instructionally, learning-wise, as the teachers.
This would apply to options 1 and 3, not necessarily to the Gateway Cyber.
Gateway Cyber is completely different.
Okay.
Asynchronous, non-gateway staff.
And as far as gifted goes for the Gateway Cyber, what are our parameters there? Is gifted available? The GIEPs are able to be met through the
GIEPs would be able to be met once the board approves. If they approve, we would then go to survey asking our parents options come back into our pool. We would then sift through and determine, okay, what are the special needs of those individual students that we're looking at to ensure that we are meeting those requirements either through a GIEP or the IEP.
And just one more follow-up.
Mhm.
I think makes sense
Yeah,
to
that's
follow up when
Yeah.
we're on the same topic, but for like honors, advanced, AP, courses of that nature, I'm assuming those go as planned.
Our teachers, our curriculum,
And for
weighted,
Gateway Cyber
yes.
Academy,
currently right now, it's not offered through the Gateway Cyber Academy.
No gifted or honors through cyber. Is that what you said?
Honors
They do offer honors? Not,
do not.
do not, okay.
honors, AP.
We've
All
had
right.
that conversation in the past
All right.
with students taking either an AP or honors weighted course
Yeah,
and the
that's
weight
right.
affecting
Yeah.
the GPAs.
Yeah, we did talk about that.
Mhm.
Okay, in regards to the cyber and or the GATE programs, at what point could parents re-opt back into regular school schedule?
Very good question. Now, we're looking at a 9-week quarterly process that if a parent signs up for, say, option 3, the GATE program, They would be essentially enrolled within that program for a 9-week period. At the end of the 9 weeks, again, the survey goes back out, and it's a flexible model where you would be allowed to jump into, perhaps at that point in time, a 5-day in-person setup. So if that occurs at the end of the 9 weeks, yes, you would be able to, or vice versa.
How many synchronous days were
There's availability, I believe, in all 5 days, Wednesday being
Yes, it's
heavier.
We would have to determine the teachers, the schedules, the amount of kids to determine how many days synchronous versus asynchronous.
Okay, you touched on this a little bit. It's regarding 5-day instruction. I'm kind of consolidating multiple questions into one, but there are some questions about where is the 5-day option? When will there be a 5-day option? And why can some of our surrounding neighbors do 5-day instruction and we can't?
Well, I can't speak on
Yeah.
the other school districts in the surrounding area. I do know that Pennsylvania Department of Education has sent, and it is on their website, and I read it verbatim here tonight, the requirements for social distancing. And it specifically states 6 feet. Today, with the help of Mr. Bob Brown, we were able to set up 2 different classrooms, one in the middle school, Mosside Middle School, and one in Cleveland Stewart Elementary. And we provided the board an opportunity to view the desk and how they would be traditionally set up in a non-COVID environment compared with how we are setting them up based off of the PDE mandates. And you can see visually and understanding that these buildings are fairly old and classrooms are not as large as what we'd like those to be. And 6 feet of distancing is still allowable for maybe 14 to 15 kids within the classroom that we were able to measure off. By having 28, 29 kids in a classroom, we're lessening that to inches, 2 feet, maybe. So based off that and understanding that our mission is to ensure health and safety of everyone, there's no way that I would recommend moving to less than 6 feet, because in my eyes and in my interpretation, and I think everyone's interpretation, it specifically states 6 feet of distance.
So if the governor moves that to 3 feet, or the Department of Education, then you would move to 5 days?
Then we would measure once again and in all likelihood move to those 5 days. And understand that information came to us on July 16th, recently. So what other school districts are doing, I can't answer that. Understanding that when we were given directives from the Secretary of Education and Tom Wolf's office, the governor, he specifically stated it's important that superintendents and school boards look at their own communities. Don't look at what other communities are doing, because essentially they don't reflect the makeup of our communities and the number of COVID cases, which you can see on the Allegheny County website. Positive cases in Monroeville and Pitcairn far outweigh cases in Plum. Penn Hills has more cases than Monroeville. All that data is accessible. We monitor that daily. That is why the recommendation is being made tonight.
Let's follow up on how I said that.
If by chance, say 40% want gate, the another 15% want cyber, would that open up a change to the cohort plan if spacing was possible?
So what you're essentially saying is a 50% option of choosing that cohort AB, would essentially almost allow that cohort to go 5 days a week. Absolutely, we would look at it, but we must follow in the
Right,
adhere to the
yeah.
guidelines.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yes.
Okay.
Is there not going to be an option of live streaming to making the synchronous education more available to the kids?
We reviewed that in option 3. Dr. Rossi, you want to put up the slides again and just provide an overview?
Sure. Mr. Clare, can you repeat the question?
Is an option for live streaming still going to be made available to offer more synchronous learning for the children?
Yes.
Explain option 3 like a little better again.
Yes, we will be offering, again, the feedback we received from the parent survey, again, it was loud and clear about the synchronous live instruction. And that will be a focus for us this year. And we'll be working with our principals and teachers to provide that. And again, it may be a little different based on the schedule and the grade level, but that is a goal of ours to offer more synchronous live instruction for our students.
So just, I've got to ask, based on what's on the screen right now, there's 3 days of asynchronous instruction. 2.5 days.
Yeah, this was just an example, a sample schedule. It could, again, this will change based off of grade level, whether it's elementary or middle school or high school. But there's opportunities throughout this week to offer those types of instruction, whether it's synchronous or some of the asynchronous. And so what we like about this is that it can be flexible and it can be based on students' needs. So if we have some students that need some remediation, that teacher could pull that group in a small virtual group on Thursday or Friday. On the other end, if we have some enrichment needs, that could happen as well. So again, we want to be able to customize this the best we can, but we don't have student schedules in front of us to do that. But again, we will try to customize it the best we can to meet the needs of the students.
Basically, Paul, this has been a very, I think, a widely discussed topic amongst emails. We get a lot of feedback. One of the most common things we've heard, and I think everybody has heard me advocating for it, is the idea of, like a live feed from the classroom. Like as an example, when cohort A is in live, in-person sessions, to have that camera working
For cohort B.
for the cohorts.
Yep.
And I've been as big of an advocate for that as anybody. After having a good discussion with Dr. Short and Dr. Rossi today, and really going through what this gate system is capable of, I think we're going to fall short of exactly that. It's not going to be a live stream of every classroom all day long. I think it comes pretty darn close, and we're going to meet a lot of needs with it. I think it's a vast improvement over anything we offered in the spring. But the bottom line was, when we looked at the quality of education that's being achieved in the classroom, the idea of having the teacher work a class of 15 kids live and then being able to manage that along with a laptop with possible interactions there, it's a view of the administration that the quality of education
It's
will
not optimal. In theory, I think everyone thinks that, okay, if I have my child at home and the class starts at 8 o'clock, and understanding that, we have 50-minute classes, sometimes 42-minute classes, depending upon the level and grade. And then your child's going to sit there throughout the 42 minutes and not be an active participant in that class. Yes, with some questions, but predominantly viewing, because understanding that teacher is with those kids in a classroom modeling, developing the lesson. And it's difficult for that classroom teacher to monitor a laptop and students online in class. Understanding that synchronous can be and will be used by a gateway teacher. within the classroom, perhaps with no students. So you're able to communicate back and forth. In that AB option, that teacher will sometimes post the beginning of a lesson activity or have something prearranged and planned as that teacher would be teaching the other in-person students.
It gives the teachers a little more flexibility. And Dr. Short was describing it. I'm lowering the mask because apparently it's really muffled on the mic.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, I apologize. I'm trying to do everything we can. So one of the situations that Dr. Short laid out to me and Mary Beth earlier today was there will be situations in particular classes, like say an AP chemistry class, where there are cohorts in class and there might be two at home. And at that point, we could have the teacher actually do what we were discussing and do, if it's a manageable number, that option's there. I think the gate system, I think this is really innovative.
Innovative.
You're there. You're there.
And
I can't blame it on the mask. I think it's fantastic. I think this is going to be a strong option moving forward, period, even once this pandemic is over. And I think where we're starting now is a good building block. Good to get our feet wet in it and really get the ball moving, and we can just continue to build on this more and more.
I got a lot of questions over here, just to let you guys know.
What about families that want their kids in school 5 days?
That's one of the questions. Val,
Well,
thanks.
I'm just bringing it out.
And I just answered that 3 minutes ago.
Somebody repeat.
Me and you have talked, actually finally agreed on something. I'm strongly in favor of getting these kids back 5 days. After really looking again at the classrooms and looking at what we have to do morally and ethically to follow these guidelines and to protect, our district and protect these kids, there's no feasible way to actually have all these kids come back and maintain 6 feet.
If you have a class of 24 to 25 students, the social distancing guidelines, mandates that's coming down from PD would go from 6 feet essentially down to 2 feet. And that's where I took the board on a tour to see exactly how those desks are stationed. And they're recommended in a straight line, straight row. So essentially you would have the back of one person 1.5 feet away from you.
Arm's length.
Arm's length.
So I think as soon as those restrictions are eased or lifted, I think we can transition into the 5 day very quickly. Fortunately, I don't see it going that way. I think the plug's going to get pulled before the restrictions get easier. And at that point, this becomes a district-wide tool, the gate. And at that point, it would become exactly what we were talking about, which would be a teacher live in a classroom, interacting directly with everybody online, in a synchronous environment.
Susan, you hit the buzzer first.
Let me ask, because I'm trying to understand, when we say Zoom, are we saying that is the same as the live stream, or are we saying two different things?
It could be the same thing, but think about it as synchronous and asynchronous. Okay? When there's synchronous learning taking place, it could be yourself within this classroom here, but there are no students. Yet you are still holding a class with 15 or 20 kids online at home who would show up on your screen. You deliver the lesson here without physical students in the classroom.
That's considered synchronous?
That's considered synchronous. Asynchronous would be if you just record something and it's posted for students at any point in time to get on and watch.
So let's say the topic of the day is counting up to 10 and then from 10 back down to 1. There are a couple ways you could do that. The teacher could stand there in front of a camera or with some kids in the room and say, let's all practice counting 1 to 10 and then 10 to 1. And they all could do that, and she or he could listen
to the students and correct them. No, you didn't go all the way up to 10. You need to get to 10, then you can come back down. Do we count 10 twice when we come back down? So there's a synchronous interaction between a human, that's the teacher, and the kids. Asynchronous would be the teacher records it, or we could go out to the internet and find someone who's created a small module, a 2-minute module where there's some little cartoon characters and they count 10 apples and then they count backwards. And the kids could play that again and again and again and again until they get it. They could practice it asynchronously. And the teacher could visit from time to time and say, now I want to hear you do it, Johnny. Let's hear your 1 to 10 and 10 to 1. So the teacher could weigh in a synchronous and an asynchronous fashion. And so let me play the devil's advocate a little bit more. There's no perfect solution. So for those folks who are angry at us not having a perfect solution, you're right to be angry. We don't have a perfect solution, and neither do you. And neither do those schools who have picked going back 5 days straight. Because what if something goes wrong? What if the 5th day somebody comes to school and the disease gets spread and that whole school has to shut down? Now they've got to scramble and do something a little different. So there's a scientific uncertainty that we must mitigate. Now, every school district has the freedom to choose. We've got 3 options in front of us, and we're about to choose 1 or 2 or 3 of those. Not only that, when we choose them, we have the opportunity to adjust. Just like I said about a minute ago, those schools that have elected to go back 5 days, if something goes wrong the 10th day, they've got to adjust because their school is completely shut down. It's the same with us. That's why Dr. Short is saying we could go for a couple of days, and if things work out, the governor doesn't come in with some strange protocols that we've got to adapt to, we can find a way to collect the kids and bring them all back online. Now, the other piece of this is there has never been in the Gateway School District a single model that works. We have private schools, charter schools, Forbes Road Career Technical Center, we've had charter, we've got kids in prison, we've got homeless kids, we've got kids traveling on vacation with on the military that come back, people that visit overseas. We've got many, many different nuances that we need to accommodate. And so the administrative team here has come up with many protocols that help satisfy that. Now we throw in one extra monkey into this wrench, the COVID-19. And so we're about to vote one way or another, and it's either going to work great, terrible, or somewhere in the middle. And we don't know. So we've been doing a lot of studying on this, and we're about to finish chewing on this in a few minutes and then vote. And when we do that, if we need to change, we will accommodate that change as best we can when that comes also.
And this is a fluid process. So I fully expect things will change.
I can knock out a punch. Speaking on the idea of fluid, I'm just going to give up on that. There's some questions and something I actually had thought of earlier we were talking about the 6 feet separation, and us not thinking it's feasible to return to a 5-day. I'm imagining that once we actually send out these surveys and we get a better feel for what the student body is going to be, if that number is low enough, it would then be flexible to return to 5 days.
That's essentially what Reverend Gallo question. In that if option 2 and 3 maybe exceed 50%, right, and then we're looking at 50% of the remainder of students, and we're able to find out where those students are in what buildings, absolutely.
But the point is that we're presenting it now as cohort in A and B because we have some projections on what we anticipate percentage-wise, what families are going to do based on the previous survey. We are well aware that that's going to change because the times have changed.
And when I say rapidly over the last several days, I've had multiple emails with families who initially, through the survey, suggested that they would feel comfortable sending their children back. Now they would like to rescind that and look at different options. So I fully expect when our survey goes out, higher numbers than we anticipated.
Yeah, I do like having multiple options because if you think about back when this all started, we got kicked out of the building with what 35 cases in the county. So with what we have now, like Lord knows what can happen tomorrow.
March 13th at 4 o'clock, the governor shut down public education in the Commonwealth.
Yeah. So yeah, I love it. And then the synchronous, something I was, in favor of because it kind of keeps everybody on the same page. Whether in the class or at home, everyone can be learning at the same time. But my three questions I have with this, one is with the synchronous lessons, are they going to be recorded so a student can view that exact lecture, exact lesson outside of the school time?
Dr. Rossi?
And there will be opportunities for that to happen. Again, it's going to depend on the grade level in the course, but there will be opportunities for lessons to be shared in that manner.
Okay, thank you. Question number two is, I don't know if this would be feasible or what, but using the cohort A and B plan, obviously depending on who all enrolls in that, would it be beneficial or not beneficial to, instead of like the 2 days and then switching to the other group, maybe just do the 1 week as group A, next week group B?
That was one of the issues that we debated. Asked several other school districts, not only in Allegheny County, but other counties as they were working through this process. And I think to a consensus, everyone recognized that at least having students in school during the week and not missing a week was beneficial and more, if you want to say, healthier for the student.
Okay. I guess my last question would be with the group A and group B. So you have group A Monday, Tuesday, they're learning their lesson, group B's at home. Obviously group B at home may or may not have the same supplies as the ones in person. So when they come in for their in-person lesson, will the teacher in a sense be behind in the curriculum now that it may have to reteach the same lesson over again?
The plan would be to continue on that learning pendulum, to be on pace with what is happening from day one to day two to day three. We understand that there will be situations where our teachers, and I know they will go above and beyond to ensure that if it's resources that students may need at home, they're given to the kids maybe the week before while they're in school, so they're preparing at home to mimic the actual, if it's a science project, maybe an art project or something similar. So there are ways to accomplish that.
Okay.
And when you get to the high school, you're looking at labs.
Yes.
I'm assuming that the schedule would reflect when those cohorts would be in the
Correct.
building and the lab periods would be scheduled accordingly.
Upon the vote tonight, if we do proceed with this plan, I've already been in contact with Mr. Stevens, high school principal, and understanding the complexities involved with the high school master schedule. Certain lab courses, they operate maybe on a 7-day lab. Labs typically would be a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. So they kind of crisscross in between what we have for the AB schedule. We would then have to go back and modify the master schedule. I advised him not to lock that schedule in advance of what we would be talking about tonight.
Let me also ask you, as far as Forbes Career Center, how does that play into?
Essentially, when you look at that A-B schedule, on Wednesday, understanding the teachers report, but there are no students in the building. Our bus company, STA, which I will have conversations with, Mrs. Isha will be involved in those conversations. Essentially on Wednesday, there is no formal need for bus transportation. So if we're able to communicate with STA and say, we have students at home who need to go to Forbes, we would take a few buses and have them make the runs to Forbes. And same thing for extracurricular activities, because essentially it's one day a week that we would not be needing technically the full service or full fleet of buses.
And these extra routes would be all 5 days of the week.
Correct.
We're taking work that we hired STA to do on Wednesday that they no longer have to
Spreading it out.
provide, and we're spreading that workload out across the other 4 days to pick up the Forbes Road kids that are not going to be bused to the high school because they're in cohort B.
Yeah, logistically, we would need to work. I think Bonnie right now is back there, grabbing her head. But I think it's manageable based off the buses, and typically with a Forbes Road bus run at the high school, we have 2 buses that typically pick up the kids, take them to Forbes, 2 buses return. So that gives you an idea of the volume. And I want to say maybe 175 kids from Gateway at Forbes. So we would be able to accommodate it.
Same would be true on the gate.
Like students in the GATE program,
Yeah.
if they did want to go to Forbes, absolutely.
Is Forbes still running on a 5-day schedule?
It's
Still going? Pardon me?
They have to work with 900 school districts, so they're waiting to get the input from the other 9.
Once
And they're going to try to
approval is
work.
made, because students have an option of choosing one of those 3, then the rosters will go to Forbes to say, okay, we have 30 kids in the blended. We have 10 in the traditional cyber and 65 in the gate. So we would then work with Forbes. They're open. I talked to the director on yesterday, and he's fully expecting that all 9 sending school districts will have similar reopening plans, but some different. I mean, there's going to be some differences here.
With some of the programs at Ford that require so many hours, so if you're on cohort A, but you're in a program that requires so many hours for that, it wouldn't matter that you're in a cohort, you'll still be transported.
He assured me that he would meet all the hourly requirements for certification.
My turn yet? Okay. A lot of these parents have been waiting. One of the questions was related to transportation, not for Forbes, but what will transportation look like for our students who pick the A/B option, and then again, when we return to school? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We have a slide for transportation. Dr. Chakey, you want to take that? Under mitigation efforts.
Sure. As far as the transportation, it's going to look exactly like it does on a regular day, but with half the enrollment. And if I'm a student that attends Forbes, then as Dr. Short just mentioned, we're going to have, because we're not using the transportation services on Wednesday, we're going to look at the potential option of running the buses for the Forbes students 5 days a week, so that we can ensure that they get their required hours for the program.
Okay, Dr. Chakey, parents are asking who will mandate temperature checks before school, will be on the bus, who will mandate face coverings on the bus, how will kids be socially distanced enforcement on the bus?
As far as temperature checks, it's in the health and safety plan that we're going to coordinate with parents to take a look and educate parents as far as some of the signs and symptoms of COVID-19, and recommend that they don't send their child if they're exhibiting some of these symptoms. We're not going to have a temperature check for students upon entry to school. The second part of that, how are we going to enforce the students coming on the bus in the morning to socially distance?
And wear masks. Both of those are questions.
Okay,
And
socially.
then also, how do you handle students who refuse to wear masks?
In order to socially distance, we're going to have to coordinate with the bus company in kind of marking off some of the seats. And if students make the decision to go into a seat that's marked as a place to not sit, we'll eventually have to take referrals like we do for any other discipline situation that occurs on the bus, that will go directly to the principal. And we'll have an opportunity to meet with that student and reach out to parents and discuss the situation, that some of these guidelines are in place for student safety. And we'll have a conversation with parents around compliance. And that also goes for the masks as well. Students that refuse to wear a mask, we're going to have to follow that like it's a disciplinary situation, and reach out to parents and educate them. We'll educate the student along with conferencing with parents on the importance of adhering to some of these regulations.
We will ensure that the buses do have, as part of their kit, extra mask, just in case. We understand it. Student may be running late, gets to the bus stop, bus is pulling in, forgot my mask. So bus drivers will have additional masks. It's also important to understand that in our plan, we do have face shields available for our students. We have researched these. Mr. Brown, are you with us? We have asked Mr. Brown to research, reach out to multiple companies that are supplying the kind of like welder's mask that have a clear shield in front of the face. We found multiple shields that we kind of tested out ourselves. We found one that seemed to fit comfortably. It has a foam sponge-like pad that rests in front of the forehead. We've purchased. We have purchased. I have them in the warehouse. So they are ready to go for our students.
And he said we could have one too.
Absolutely. Question on shields. Will that student keep that shield, or who's going to clean the shields after that student wears them?
I would expect once we give a student a shield, that would be theirs to keep, and theirs to clean.
Case Mrs. Brown can come through the microphone there. That's the answer to that was each student will have their own shield. They're
Yes.
not going to be shared. They're not going to be.
There's no cost to the shield.
Correct.
We're providing it. We want to ensure that our students are safe in that environment. Now, whenever they're away from the 6 feet guideline, it's not necessarily to be used. However, in hallways and other areas where it's mandated, the students would have the face shield instead of a mask.
Well, we have
They're still encouraged to wear a mask, but not necessarily mandated.
While we have Mr. Brown here, because you know how much we like to make you walk back and forth.
I was about to say, can you take that?
One of the questions that I had several parents ask about was the chemicals we're using in the sanitation process and the cleaning process. Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to go through the molecular structure of each product.
You should know that.
But yeah, I'm sure you do. Could we possibly post the MSDS sheets like to the website?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the answer was, yeah, that's the material safety and data sheets, which anybody that works anywhere, you have a binder somewhere that says MSDS, and it lists all of the chemicals and potential side effects of anything that's being used.
We'll be able to list that on the website under our COVID-19 section.
Came up to 64 questions now, so
One
I would
more.
like to address some of these parents who have been waiting after Valerie's question.
Will all the staff be issued shields? Teachers, paras?
Masks already. So the shields are going to be optional, but we have enough for all of the staff.
For the staff as well, yeah.
Okay.
Could I just describe those to folks at home that don't have an understanding of what it's going to be like? You know, the gallon milk jug bottle is made of plastic. It's a certain thickness. It's not really thick. It's not really thin. It's going to be that level of plastic, and the plastic is going to be as clear as a bottle of water. And it's going to have like 4 pieces of foam, like pieces of marshmallow, like the big marshmallows, stuck to the front of your forehead, and the shield comes down, and then there's little, like a band or something that holds it on. So it's very light, not in the way at all.
It's very comfortable.
Very comfortable. It's a distance away from your nose and your eyes and your mouth. So it's a very well-designed little piece of equipment and cheap.
Okay, let's go with a couple quick, easy ones related to cyber school. Is there a limit to how many people can enroll
Into
into the cyber? Is there a point where it gets full, is the question?
and we're not talking the GATE program.
Nope, we're talking the AIU cyber program.
Open anyone and everyone.
All right, it's unlimited. And then what does the cyber school workload look like?
Cyber school workload.
Yeah, and compared to a full day in class, they want to know kind of how does it
About how long?
compare?
Yeah,
How many
and
days-
it
how many hours of
varies
instruction?
based on the student's schedule, asynchronous and or synchronous opportunities that effectively would happen through the IU. But at times, the student may choose to opt in at 6 o'clock at night to view I'm going to say canned lesson, and then respond, issue questions, wait for a response from those questions.
Okay,
So I don't want to say is a set schedule as typically you would see in a traditional high school setting.
so that relates to another question about the structure of the synchronous day for the students. So when they're in the AB cohort and it's their day at home,
Mm-hmm.
should they expect to be working all day?
There would be work all day, absolutely.
Okay.
Mary Beth, if I can knock out some of these, I think we're gonna get into a bunch of, I think we're gonna answer a lot of the same questions and get a lot of them knocked out at once possibly. If you wanna keep going, I'm
I would
fine
like
with
to
it.
get a couple of these since I'm up to 68. Okay, and people were able to zoom in to ask questions.
I understand.
Can we make these a priority first for at least a group of them and get the number down a little bit? I would like to do that.
It's your meeting,
All
Madam
right,
President.
thank you. This question's a little bit harder. It's actually not my meeting. It's the people's meeting who
Yes.
are zooming in, who are asking these questions. And I think it's very important that we try to answer all of their questions.
I never meant to intend or intended to mean
All right, let's go
anything to
with
the
a
contrary.
hard one. There's a hard one for you, Dr. Short. How will younger students learn how to navigate the synchronous, asynchronous websites when parents are at home but working and may not have time to help log in and get the environment set up if needed, troubleshooting when things go wrong?
Had you asked?
Very good question. Dr. Rossi.
Well, if they're in the cohort, the option one, we'll obviously have to spend some time during the face-to-face instruction to make sure the students are able to navigate through all of the platforms that we will be using. K4 students, we're planning on providing iPads to all students, so there's going to be a learning curve with that as well. But we plan to have some parent meetings in August, kind of get the parents some information as well. But we're going to have to spend some time those first few weeks, especially the first few days, getting students. We have a lot of change happening here. We've got to really retrain how we've done education. You know, kindergarten no longer is, it's playtime. We have to revise all that. It's going to be very challenging. So we have the social distancing, but we also have the digital platforms and all of the technology that goes with it. So we have a plan in place. We're going to be prepared as best we can. And I know our teachers are up for the challenge.
Is it possible or feasible for us to have some kind of a tech support line available? Is that part of the plan?
Can we put up on the screen? Mm-hmm.
So I think to answer that question, we will have something available, a help desk for the parents or for the children if they're having trouble logging in.
Correct.
And having trouble getting used to this online learning.
You're saying technology help desk. Who will be doing the technology help desk? Are you talking our tech department?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
We discussed internally with, of course, Micah, but this status could, or technology help desk, could be created right here in central office. Not ready to say how or by whom, but alternatives to already an overtaxed technology department.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's a question on are the regular hour year and yearly requirements for the school year going to be the same? You know, the state 180 days.
Currently, the 180 days or the 990 hours based on the level are still in play. Last meeting with Secretary Rivera indicates that potentially that could change to allow flexibility for districts. So stay tuned. Once that is released, of course, we would announce that, and that would allow the district a little bit more flexibility as far as the school calendar.
Okay, someone said transportation cleaning. Shouldn't it be cleaned after every pickup, drop-off rotation, considering buses run from the high school through the elementary school?
And I would agree with that. I will find out the details as far as the cleaning that will occur and post those as well. And I believe we have that on the actual plan, Dr. Chakey, is that correct?
Yeah, we do. And we're also going to coordinate some meetings with STA to get a lot more detail as to how the buses are going to be disinfected.
We may be even able to provide a video of how the buses will be cleaned to show our constituents. Been a long day, wherever we go. I feel like I'm at one of those Senate hearings.
Okay, if the child is in the same cohort but two different schools, will they ride the same bus? Or will we still have regular bus times and routes?
Run that one by me again?
So are elementary school and middle school kids going to be on the same bus? Because we have less kids? Like the person is asking if,
No.
okay. I'm just reading them. Can you talk about the protocol if someone has the virus or comes in contact with the virus, what happens?
We will be releasing, and I shared it with the board, and I thought it was a very well put together flow chart that indicated, and this came from the Allegheny Department, Allegheny Intermediate Unit, to all school districts indicating if a student is thought to be COVID-19, parents indicate the steps what to do. I've shared that with our department chair nurse, Kathy Bishop. She's examining that. It establishes the communication protocols. I've also shared it today on a Zoom meeting with Kathy Bishop and the Allegheny County, Allegheny Health Network. They have a specialist program that is being put together to offer school districts an opportunity to vet their pandemic plans and health plans through them to see if they can make any recommendations to how we operate and communicate with parents.
We're going to obviously share this.
That flow chart will be posted, absolutely.
Just briefly, does this flow chart, does it involve quarantines, shutting down a building if a child tests positive or if a staff tests positive?
The communications would be set for us as a district to reach out to the Allegheny County Health Department. At that point in time, they would assist in recommending a school closure.
So it would be a situation by situation.
Absolutely.
Call. Okay. On the same topic, I did have a number of families reach out that obviously live in the Gateway community, have students that attend school here, but have spouses or people that live in their home that work or teach in a separate school district. And the concern is if there's a quarantine over at Woodland Hills and he lives in Monroeville, how does that affect their child going to and from school? You follow me? Like the kind of jumping over district lines, within a family.
if the family's on quarantine, I would assume that student would be on quarantine too.
Well, it would be it would be the parent at the school, at the different school district is placed under quarantine for whatever reason.
Yes.
We would then obviously have to observe that quarantine with the family that lives in Gateway.
Yes, that would be my understanding, because the communication piece would have to come in from that family to say, I've been possibly exposed or have been confirmed. Based on that, we're self-quarantining the family. I'm notifying, even though I may teach at Woodland Hills, I'm notifying Gateway. The 14 days of quarantine or 10 days would go into effect.
Thank you.
Okay, starting in Mosside Middle School, the kids are broken up into classes based on learning level. Is that still happening? And will they be put in classes based on their learning level with GATE option 3?
Based on learning level, if a parent chose option 3,
Yeah.
yes. Of course, we would have to see how many students. And I remind the families outside here, it's important that once the choices are made, it then allows the district and the administrators to sort through what would their schedule look like without the restrictions, so then we can match up in the GATE program to ensure that we're meeting their needs based off of a higher level course offering.
All right. In option 1, will the YMCA before and after care still be available?
We've had communication, Mr. Brown. I think you were on the latest communication from the Y about the preschool program, or I'm sorry, the daycare. You weren't on that communication. They have reached out to me. They are unsure right now what they're going to do, of course, based off the mandates, but they would be responsible for sending out communication about that, not the Gateway School District. So the Y would be responsible.
Gateway Cyber Academy does list AP and honors classes in its curriculum. However, the district does not recognize that for class rank GPA purposes. Can this be changed? What's the rationale for preventing students to earn that credit through all options?
And we've been down that road before. And several years ago, we had a committee and we looked at and examined, and I know Mrs. Warning was on that committee. And we had lengthy conversations and discussions. And at that time, our teachers, community, parents, administration felt that the rigor of the courses should be completed in person and not online in order to receive the weight. Nothing has changed with that at this point, understanding that we are in a new world, so to speak, and examining different things. However, those options for someone to take in the GATE program would effectively allow that to occur for honors or AP.
So if you want honors or AP, it would be better for you to sign up for the GATE program at Gateway rather than the cyber. Pretty much.
Yes,
You just said.
to receive, yeah. It's your option,
have
but
to.
I mean, yeah.
You know, I mean, that's a better option
Mhm.
actually, because it's Gateway teachers. How will orchestra and band be dealt with at the high school, and how will art, gym, et cetera?
Those courses would still be offered. They do have a curriculum. Understanding that perhaps some of the projects, the pieces that Mr. Helchi typically does may be altered or changed. I have a meeting next week with Mr. Helchi and Mr. Lassick to review marching band and exactly what would happen within the curriculums when students return back to work.
Is chorus included in that too?
Yes, it is.
But in all cases, we'd be adhering to the
Same guidelines. So, information would be relayed through the department, whether or not that's the art department, music, phys ed, upon selection of the program of choice.
Okay.
I actually have a question here from an incoming 8th grade student that I think I know pretty well.
This is your daughter?
Yeah. It's actually something I hadn't thought of. I think in the past we've had a number of parochial and private school students that come to Gateway buildings for gifted enrichment. Are we continuing that program, and how are we dealing with the protocol there?
We would have to reach out to the parochial schools to see exactly how their reopening plans would occur. I'm not sure we can even comment at this time, not knowing what their reopening plans are. Eventually, they will communicate with us their reopening plans, as they typically do. Once we confirm that, we will be able to have an answer. That's an excellent question.
Okay, there's a lot of questions about the teachers. Are the teachers going to be in the building? Are they going to be working from home? That's pretty much.
Well, understanding on August 17th, the first teacher day, teachers are to report to the building. We do have 4 days of in-service planned, plus the clerical day on the 21st. That coincides with the potential here of the calendar adjustment. Teachers would then receive their in-service program aligned to the social professional development with technology, and then a 2-week period for administration to effectively get those schedules in place and ready to go for September 8th, while allowing for the surge to subdue and perhaps Governor Wolf to issue the next proclamation.
Yes.
Yes.
Just the class sizes are going to be smaller and in different areas.
Correct.
I have a question for Mr. Brown regarding the air condition. There's some concern with kids being in the classroom with masks, and what is the status of our air conditioning? I know that we just bought some new ones.
Well, it varies in every building. Some of our buildings have complete building air conditioning systems. We have added the Gateway Middle, Mossad Middle, University Park, and Evergreen additional air conditionings that the board approved earlier this year. We're actually just finishing that project up. So, the classrooms that, the homerooms and all those were all addressed. Coordinating that with the principals of each building of what they needed in their building.
Can you repeat the names of the buildings? Was Mossad?
The buildings that we
And you-
had added them to was Mossad Middle.
Yep.
Gateway Middle, University Park, and Evergreen.
Okay.
Cleveland Stewart, Ramsey, and the high school have complete building air conditioning already.
Okay.
So the schools that don't have complete air conditioning already, is every room where the kids have to wear a mask going to be air conditioned?
Based on what the principals requested. Not every single room per building is air conditioning based on what that usage of that room was.
Thank you.
And I think a point there is because we're maintaining the 6 feet, Bill's informed us that the regulations and the guidelines recommend 6 feet. If you can maintain 6 feet, the masks are not necessary.
Right.
And obviously, I've had a couple people ask if we can post that information.
Yes.
Online as well.
Which is why
we're getting a lot of online content.
Which is why we're not wearing masks.
Correct.
So it's distanced.
I tried.
Yes.
I tried, and I was getting a lot of feedback that nobody could understand me. So, which was probably a positive.
Well, I hate to agree with you.
And just so the public knows, we've purchased air conditioning units going back several months, anticipating this fall start, not knowing, of course, where we're going to be at with COVID, but also to ensure health as kids come back to school. And I believe they're already, I saw a crew out there.
We are just completing the entire project.
Yes. So how many do you estimate that we put in over the last 40.
It's a good estimate.
Thank you, Bob.
Do we know if we'll have any after-school activities, and if so, which ones?
Currently, right now, everything is a go for athletics based off of the recent PIAA communication. They are essentially passing things on to Governor Wolf's office. I do know that there are other neighboring states who are adjusting their calendars, pushing things back for the start of, say, fall athletics. Currently in Pennsylvania, we have our heat acclimation period beginning on August 10th. That is essentially when the first day of camps for all sports occurs. Excuse me, marching band, after my discussion with Jim Helchie on the 28th, potentially is looking at a return on August 1st.
Did I-
Chess club and all that stuff.
Correct. To go.
What about esports?
Esports, it's coming.
So
Stay
even
tuned.
all indoor sports, we're gonna,
We have to follow the guidelines. So depending upon the size of the team, et cetera.
or the nature of the
Yeah.
game.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking specifically like girls volleyball.
Volleyball, yes.
You're not gonna be able to maintain 6 feet.
Mhm.
Well, wrestling would be winter. And by then, everything might be different.
Did I hear correctly that there will be plexiglass in all of the classrooms?
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Brown, why don't you talk into Brian's mic, maybe? Or
I have two.
The question about plexiglass, again, we have met virtually every day, looked at products, looked at different components, the size. Mr. Brown and his department went out and measured every office in the district, desk, teacher's desk, to ensure that we're getting a plexiglass barrier. And I'll let you take it from there.
We have an order put together for over 500 different, there's 500 barriers of different sizes and types based on the need. Right at this moment, waiting on the go-ahead to place the order. That we have it ready to go in. And just waiting on the go-ahead from
who?
well, Dr. Short is, when I have that, to get the go-ahead to actually place the order, it's a considerable amount of money to do that. So,
And the funding does come from
and the plan
CARES Act.
kind of determined what we were going to do. Also, plexiglass barriers are being made right now by our staff for all the cafeterias. Even if we don't eat in them, we still have to hand food through them. So all of those areas are being produced as we speak.
Well, if you want plexiglass, you better start ordering it.
And
It's all behind.
essentially, we
We're gonna get-
wanted to wait for this vote because if things would change, and then that would ultimately affect the order and what we do and the cost. So we wanted to make sure that we're on board with everything tonight. Once approval is granted, Bob would put the order in.
Dr. Short, if I could I toss a question over to the athletic director?
I believe Dawn is on. Yes.
So Dawn, I'd like to ask a quick question. You've been having sort of an early experiment. Some of the kids have been working out various team sports, conditioning. What's the general health report that you can give? Are the kids generally healthy? Have any of them gotten COVID-19? What's their condition?
I'm happy to report that we've had no instances in any of our athletes, student athletes, or other extracurriculars. We have had several who vacationed in hotspots who have quarantined or tested negative to make sure that they could come back to work out with the various teams. Certainly, it is a fluid situation, as Dr. Short alluded to. I'm kind of transitioning into the PIAA stance now. But we feel like we've all sort of gotten on board with the protocol, our pre-screening, routine. And I think the families have adjusted to it. And ultimately, it'll be interesting to see where it goes as we go forward. It's encouraging, as an athletic director, that our state organization has shown a desire to try to reflect how important those activities are, extracurriculars and co-curriculars for our kids, and are committed to trying our very best as a state to go forward. So we're hopeful, but again, a lot of unanswered questions still remain as far as things, how exactly it's going to happen.
One more very quick high-level question. Are those athletes, generally speaking, on the older side, like 14 to 18 years old, or are there some kids that are quite young, like 6, 7, 8 years old? Because there's a difference in the way that these kids contract or spread the virus. And that's another good way that we can test to see whether it's safe to begin reopening the doors to have the kids get together at school. So are the only on the older or the younger side? Don.
Some of that broke up, but I believe your question was the age of the participants. And we do have some middle school programs that are participating in some off-season stuff, but primarily they are our high school age students. So we're talking about 9th through 12th graders, roughly 14 to 15 years old through 17 to 18 years old are the athletes and students involved.
And still no COVID-19 outbreaks. That's a very good indicator. Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
I know me and you communicated through a few emails this week. Can we maybe just relay some of that information for families that have, students that they want to enroll in Gateway Cyber or in the GATE program or potentially looking at charter schools? Can you discuss the eligibility requirements and regulations when it comes to extracurricular activities and sports at Gateway?
Certainly. As long as students meet the eligibility requirements of the PIAA, which are fairly typical, things like attendance and academic good standing, eligibility in that regard, as well as things like completed paperwork, physicals, registrations, those sorts of things. Students that are homeschooled or are in cyber school are eligible to do any activity in their homeschool district as any other student that's in the physical building. So anyone that would be involved in our Gateway Cyber or GATE would be, immediately, still remain in the same situation. On the flip side, we're talking about in a charter school, if the charter school does not offer a sport, then that student would also, public charter, that student would be able to participate in the sport in their district of residence. In other words, for an example, if a student from Monroeville went to a public charter school or cyber charter school other than Gateways, they could return to Gateway to participate in sports if their sport is not offered. If the sport is offered at that other school, that other charter school, they can only participate in that sport there. Private schools, essentially because they've opted to go to that private school, presumably understanding the pros and cons, if they are not able then to participate for Gateway in any capacity, only in the sports that are offered at the actual private school. So public charter, public cyber charter, our cyber, homeschooled, all those students would be eligible to compete in all the athletics and extracurriculars at Gateway, as long, again, as we're not offered at the actual school that they attended.
Thanks, Coach.
And if I may go one more step with this, because I love to beat a dead horse. The reason I'm asking Don Hull about the athletics is because here's a chance for us to test whether these students, when they get together and work out and stress themselves, are coming down with the disease. And if they're not, that sort of opens the door for the chess club, the robotics club, the other clubs as well to get together, and for us to know whether it might be safe for them to do that as well. So that's why I asked the question. I think the horse is dead.
Okay, back to the public. Are students planning to get actual grades this year, or there will be pass-fail again?
They will have actual grades.
Next.
How will state testing be done if online?
Currently, right now, the state has not waived the 2021 PSSA and/or Keystone exams. We are anxiously waiting. I think all superintendents throughout the Commonwealth have provided Pedro Rivera, the Secretary of Education, our thoughts on how we view the test should be altered, minimized, eliminated for this year. But we're anticipating something here within the next month.
Wow, you can quote me on this. So the state has just handed us a bunch of crap and said, figure this out. Keep going.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying.
Okay. Teachers, there's another question about teachers and will they have a full schedule? How many classes will they be teaching? Will we have to lay any teachers off? Because obviously if some people choose an online option, we're not going to need all of our teachers. So I'm combining a couple questions here.
Contract. Teachers have the option, or excuse me, we have the option to have them instruct 5 periods or 6 periods based off of their hiring date. So essentially every teacher will have a schedule, a full schedule.
Which will include both in-class participation and presumably online synchronous.
And that would be determined by,
How many kids are coming back?
you got it.
All right. I'll step on toes, but I just got
Go ahead.
follow up. That
Yep.
question.
Yep.
So if there's 100, 300 teachers in the district, are all of them teaching 5 days a week? And how many classes are each of them teaching?
All teachers receive a schedule. That schedule reflects 5 days a week, some with 5 periods, some with 6 periods. We maximize the full extent of the scheduling. Some teachers may have their schedules reflect more of a synchronous or asynchronous schedule based on the numbers. As an example, if we have, say, 25 students at University Park who elect to do the GATE program, we would then have a teacher or two based off of the grade levels, because we don't know that yet, then instruct those kids synchronously or asynchronously.
Got it.
Because understand, in theory, if there are 20% of families who choose the GATE program at the high school, essentially that could be a loss of 220 students. Not a loss to the district, but a loss from physically being in the high school. So essentially, when you reduce those 220 students from a master schedule, essentially you're freeing up some teachers who would then be able to take over that classroom.
In other words, the benefit of it, and another brilliant move of setting up this GATE program, is that the more students we have that choose that program, the more teachers we'll have available for the synchronous live feed learning.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yes.
The administration is prepared to, no matter how the survey comes back, we're going to,
And ideally,
adjust.
Those students who have been enrolled in our cyber academy, which has done an excellent job over the years, who may choose to bump into that GATE program,
We certainly hope so.
thus saving the district some funds based off of not having them choose the AIU Waterfront Learning Platform.
Gotcha. So how many teachers do we have in the district?
360 roughly.
Wow. Okay. Sorry, go.
I think
We're down to 60,
maybe 260.
59 questions.
None. I know, because people keep adding as we keep talking. So we have to go faster.
No, go ahead.
Just, I'm looking at this in-service, well, the new calendar, I'm just gonna bring this up. The teachers will be off between the 21st and the 7th.
That is correct.
Is,
There will be no requirements for teachers, no requirements for students. That is a 2-week, if you want to call it moratorium time, to allow Mr. Brown and his department, after the clerical day where the teachers go in and will mark, tape, say the room, that their materials, because we have to essentially remove non-essential furniture and equipment from the room to be stored in the building. That 2-week period will help Mr. Brown, will also help administration to formalize those schedules and the teaching staff to prepare for September 8th.
okay, I just want, I believe there's 262 teachers, but I'm just,
Yes, thank you for that.
Okay, just a thought, that time frame where there is no one here. Just seeing emails coming back that, you know, with the Google Classroom, just with the way that the end of the school year went, would it be possible more training for the teachers to get it be more easy for them? So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know with
And-
GEA.
The previous calendar only had 2 days at the beginning of the year, 17th and 18th, with the 19th being clerical. We've taken 2 additional professional development days out of the calendar, front-loaded it to have 4 straight days of professional development. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, clerical on Friday. So the teachers essentially are doubling their professional development because we know how intense this will be.
Do you know yet? I know there's a lot of questions about the tracking of COVID and, you know, a lot of repeat questions about protecting health information of people, yet mitigating the cases and keeping the school safe. And I want to reiterate that the plan for that is under review by AHN and by medical staff, our nurses, and it will be communicated in August to the public, correct?
That is correct.
Is there any information you can say with certainty yet about how positive cases are going to be tracked in the school? Was that going to be an Allegheny Health Department contact tracing issue?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. We feel free that, or we can release that flow chart, put it onto the website, along with information from tonight's meeting. So our public can see the flow chart. I know Ms. Delaney commented on it. And it's thorough. I mean, and I thought pretty easy to follow. There's so many variances to it, if I'm saying that correctly. Yes.
Another question, I'm just curious about the paras, the paraprofessionals. How do they fit into the scheme of things? Let's say option 3.
Mm-hmm.
How do they fit in if it's
And that would be worked out within the special education department on students who may be at home, who not necessarily would need a para, but that para could be replaced within a virtual classroom.
Okay.
So essentially the instruction would be synchronous.
Okay.
Piggyback, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, but there's a lot of questions, a lot of information is coming out in a very short period of time tonight. Is there any way that we could put together on the webpage an FAQ that we can consolidate all these things so that a lot of the questions. What's that?
We are already working on that. The volume of questions, we're kind of sorting through those and kind of like redlining ones that are duplicates. But we anticipate that going live here within a couple of days.
Okay.
Here's a great question. How clean is a face shield when the child sneezes on it?
I'm not volunteering for that either, John.
I mean, that's funny, but it is a.
I guess that would, we have like I saw disinfectant wipes in the classroom.
We have kits that will be available with wipes, additional mask, all the resources needed to help in that situation.
Actually, Mrs. Bungard went into a little bit more detail with that. There are some kids who have special needs, and they have to actually develop protocols for touching and holding the child's hands, et cetera, in special ways. And the special ed department folks are well trained to do that.
Correct.
Okay, here's a tough one for you. Ready? How can you have security metal detectors, but you're not doing temperature checks?
Department of Education deemed it not practical at this point to do the temperature checks with students who may be entering a bus, unloading from a bus, entering into a building that may have metal detectors, and essentially taking a temperature scan of every child coming in. That's not to say that we have been proactive in looking at options to streamline this.
Have you looked at the infrared temperature checks? You can look up to the metal detector?
Yes, we've looked at those. As I stated earlier, even though the document is in its form today, things could be added in. We have communicated with a local agency here in Monroeville that offers that program. We're awaiting a bid, projected cost on what it would take in order to demand that. Staffing becomes an issue with that because right now our teachers have a lot on their plate. The last thing I want to do is just have them taking temperatures. It's
Reverend,
On the
one day a week, you said it.
What's that?
You only work one day a week.
Well, we
On
also
the
talked
temperature
about,
check, the new study that's come out is that there's 48% of individuals with COVID that actually present a temperature. The highest, the symptom is cough. Then you have temperature. Then underneath that is muscle fatigue. Is the third most common symptom. So the temperature check was a very high priority in the beginning. Although it's important, but it's not necessarily the tell-all.
so it could almost be a false sense of security if you're only doing fever checks. So that really critical thing is that parents and older students have to take some personal responsibility in this matter to monitor for cold symptoms.
And we will be sending out guidance on this and more or less a checklist for parents to follow as they release their child either to the bus stop or to getting on a bus or dropping them off at school. And likewise, our teachers will also be trained on, they're in the same predicament. They're coming into our buildings. They must then analyze and self-assess themselves.
And all symptoms can be masked anyhow. When we went on a trip, they were doing temperature checks. This is clear back in March. But certain people, after walking through in the cold, you actually had to stand there and rub your forehead because it wouldn't read your temperature. And the same is true if you're standing in sunlight.
Yes.
If you have light coming through a bus, the window shining on you when you come in, you can register a temperature when you don't
I
actually have a
was
temperature.
standing outside the Apple store when my phone cracked trying to get it fixed, and you weren't allowed inside the store because of social distancing, allowing so many people in. And I stood outside and it was warm out. I mean, it was like 6, 7 o'clock at night and it was hot. And then as I was entering, they do the temperature check and they didn't allow me in. And I said, high blood pressure, stress, but you know, the heat. And then they allowed me to go in, sit in the AC for a minute or two, then it was perfect.
Exactly. There'll be a lot of false positives and false negatives, and it also has to do with the training and the calibration of the instrument.
Absolutely.
I talked with the flight surgeon's friend of mine about this. He says, you know, it's very difficult to rely on any single modality. That's why Mrs. Cerrucci's recommendation is good. Have the parents look at the children, look in their eye, put your hand, you know, on the.
And we will ensure that.
Teachers can also, I'm sorry, let me finish this. Teachers can also do, they can look at a student if they know them, they can tell, Johnny's not, you're not feeling well today. Is that true? No, I'm feeling good. No, you don't look like go see the nurse. So teachers who know the kids are able to help, you know, maybe ferret out some symptoms that aren't presented via strictly mechanical means?
The amount of communication moving forward on this. It's important that our parents understand that we will be setting up an isolated page on our website specifically for these communications, outgoing through our messaging system. It will be a lot of dialogue, communication on what's coming, video presentations on how to screen kids. So we're going to be covering a lot. And at any time, if there's a question, please feel free to ask.
Okay, this is a good one for a parent who's, after me, for a parent who's trying to decide between the cohort and the cyber, and they work, so they have to help their kids later in the day. Are the students required during the cohort to log in on the computer during specific times?
And that will be determined based on the teacher and the time that that teacher would have with certain periods. Of course, accommodations can be made if a parent chooses that I would rather have that time with my student, that something could be videotaped.
Or if the power goes out, comes back up 2 hours later, you
Absolutely.
have to adjust.
Okay, Brian, you're up.
Just going back to last thing about the testing the kids and the self-evaluations. Just trying to think of all scenarios, and I really don't want this to happen at all. But say in the event you have a child, parent home, doing a checklist, and it's a winter time. We have a lot of colds, a lot of flus. The COVID thing has a lot of flu-like symptoms, so it's almost the same there. And the parent decides, it's just a cold. We're gonna send them in. Might be in the flow chart there. Is there any way that we could potentially get a jump on it? So like maybe bus driver might notice it and notify the school so we can get them in, or
But bus drivers will go through that training, absolutely. And I think you touched on something very important, because we do know that the seasonal change, we've been in these buildings, coughs occur, runny noses, you name it, it happens. And to differentiate between what it is, it's difficult, extremely difficult. So hopefully the more information that does come available, similar to what Mr. Gallagher said there with the temperature checks, hopefully by November, December, would we be able to really fine tune the difference between a common cold or potential COVID.
I think it's just kind of messy, like December, and kid comes in, like sneezes or runny nose, like, we gotta send you down. Back
Well,
first.
as of right now, with those symptoms, potentially that student may be asked to, go home, self-quarantine, you have a test.
So, yeah, let's dig into that one more little step. Are we gonna have a
Thank you, Paul.
requirement for coming back?
What's that?
Are we gonna have a requirement for coming back? Kid comes in, because anybody who's a parent that has any little ones knows, especially the little ones, they get sick a lot.
Yes.
So are we gonna send home every kid that has the sniffles and then require them to do a COVID test to come back into school, or?
Typically, the doctor, their own physician, personal care physician would make that recommendation. The only part that we would have in this is notifying the parent of symptoms. The parent then would take that student, and the doctor would determine, okay, let's provide this child with a test. At that point in time, the test is confidential, meaning the results. So we would then establish the communication with that parent to say, if we do have a positive case, of course, we would have to contact the Allegheny County Health Department and then follow the flow chart that's been presented.
Are the state and county offering any assistance for any of this?
They are, yes. They are.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
A lot more questions on the gate option. Okay, ready?
Thank you.
Sorry. This is important for people to make the right decision.
I agree.
So if they're choosing the gate option, what does a synchronous day look like? Did I understand correctly that the student parent has to request synchronous time with the instructor, and that will be the only actual synchronous interaction? No.
No.
Expand.
Dr. Rossi,
Yeah,
losing my voice.
The teacher will schedule the synchronous instruction. Again, it's going to be based on the teacher schedule as well. Keep in mind, if they have multiple courses going on, they're going to have to schedule their day. And then from there, they'll be able to schedule the synchronous instruction online.
Okay. Will students be permitted to use backpacks? Do we still have backpacks?
Actually, I was just asking Dr. Short that. I was hoping to answer some of these questions. I don't think we've made that decision yet. I think that might depend on
which choice or option a parent would do.
how many kids we have coming into the building.
But I am communicating with Mr. Lorenzo to ensure that the food and nutrition is delivered to those families who need it during the course of the day.
What happens if, well, I should say, where would the student go or students, if you have more than one, if they show symptoms at school and a parent is not home to pick them up?
We have quarantine rooms that will be established within every building. They're recommending the first, if you call it line of defense, would be the nurse's office. Sometimes that can become very busy, a lot of folks. However, during our principal meetings that are forthcoming this week, we're going to ask that the building maps layouts be determined in case we do have an overflow of students, that we're able to use a quarantine room. That will be manned with an individual person, because we cannot allow a kid just to be quarantined alone.
All right, I'm Mary Beth. I'm working on the same set you are. Figure we can kind of tag team. A lot of questions about the student lunch program.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, we do plan on serving lunch for the folks that choose option one in the cafeterias.
That is correct.
Maintaining social distance.
Correct.
Masks can be off while they're eating.
Correct.
While they're in line, while they're mingling, masks would be on.
Essentially, 1,200 students typically at Gateway High School. By the 50% reduction on those days, you're dropping it to 500 to 600 students. Understanding that maybe 50 to 75 attend Forbes that won't be in the cafeteria, plus maybe 100 to 200 maybe out of the building into the GATE program. So essentially, you're lessening the total population of the high school for certain days, maybe to 350 to 400, which fits fine into our lunch period 6, 3 lunches.
If we needed an overflow room, we could work that out. Related to that question, this is something me and you have talked about. I think we've done a very good job feeding a lot of students all summer long and throughout the shutdown in the spring with the different locations we've had, distributing lunches. I know me and you have talked about continuing that in some form moving forward as we open for school for the kids that are, in the option one, but those 3 days when they're home.
Yes.
Or for kids that choose the other 2 options that aren't in the building to get those lunches. We haven't quite hammered out the logistics of it yet, but we're going to be making efforts.
Yeah, logistically, first thing, Martin Lorenzo, director of our food service department, we would need to know how many students would be in that building to essentially determine how lunches would be operated. From there, timing-wise and staff-wise, we would be able to say, okay, we have this many students who would be in need of the service of a lunch and how to deliver that. So essentially, it starts our conversation once the numbers come in.
Right. But based on some of the guidelines that are coming out too, isn't it encouraged for as many kids that can bring their lunch to school to bring it, and they can stay in the classroom and eat?
At this point in time, at least at the high school and middle school, we're recommending the use of the cafeteria.
Okay.
I think food within the classroom, as Mr. Brown probably notes, that
It makes it a little more difficult.
it causes some
Oh,
problems.
he just rolled his eyes.
I know he did.
I'm sorry.
Very bad. I apologize. My phone is nearly dead. I was get some of these questions.
Are you not looking at the same questions that I am? or-
I am, but my phone is dying, and I have a
Go
list
ahead,
of my own.
go.
Ms. Spungard, we've had a lot of questions about special ed. I appreciate, all the efforts you've made. We pointed out at the last meeting that you've been a vital part of this process with the committee throughout, and that every step we've made and every option we've laid out, we've taken into consideration every student of every need, all up and down the board. The question here would be, once we pass this plan and we leave it, we send a survey out to parents, is there going to be a protocol or a process in place for a parent to discuss their particular IEP or GIEP with the special ed department before making that choice, so that they can kind of figure out, depending on their students' needs, which one of those three choices is best?
Yes, Mr. McIntyre. So what's being recommended at this point is today's options have the district will be reviewing and using for the educational platform have been presented. And what I've been suggesting to parents, whether individually in emails or on phone calls, is that this time to be contacting either their building principals or the special education department to schedule a meeting to review those options that we've presented here tonight. And we can look at specifically how that would affect that child's IEP and what revisions may need to be made to that document, whether it's in the goals, especially design instructions, the accommodation section, or how that would look specifically for each student.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Another question that I got from a number of parents was regarding student counseling, whether it be guidance counseling or social work, things like that. We have a plan in place. We obviously going to be able to optimize and use the online portion for a lot of that.
Absolutely. Counselors will be prepared. Been speaking with school psychologist Monica Griffith, and she's aware of the social emotional needs of students. And I know Mrs. Bungard has been communicating with the counselors as well as we prepare to open up.
Dr. Jakey, if you wouldn't mind, can you speak about what steps the district has taken and are taking to ensure equity across all these options?
Well, first and foremost, it remains a priority, the culturally responsive pedagogy, whether we're in the format of online learning, face-to-face learning. We're going to continue our CRP lessons that we've implemented and we've been providing for teachers. The other aspect of this is if we do have students that are online, we made sure that Wi-Fi is available for all students. Under the safety and security grant, we made sure that we attempted to purchase Wi-Fi hotspots for all students. So every single student that is in need will have equal access to any resource provided by Gateway School District. So that's something that's always going to remain, whether we're online or face-to-face in person.
Thank you, Dr. Chaikin. I think that's something to be very proud of as a district, that we've been preparing for this, unknowingly, but working towards that 1-to-1 ratio with technology has been one of the better investments I think this district's made.
And I need to applaud the efforts of Mike O'Brien and his department, because when I say they went above and beyond after March 13th to ensure that we made the deliveries to the students, it was like a well-oiled machine. Cars were pulling up, computers were being checked out, dropped off, and we were able to get things up and going quickly. So thank you, Mike. I know you're out there somewhere.
Yeah, Rick got 3 of them, so I just bought one off him.
What? Alrighty then.
Go ahead, Mary Beth.
Okay.
Go ahead. Ask a question. Several of the pairs are asking questions on that Wednesday. Will they be expected to come to work?
Ms. Bungard, are you on?
Yes, I'm here, Dr. Short. So we are planning to have the paraprofessionals work 5 days a week. We will be assessing the different enrollments for the students in the options, and we will determine how we will utilize them to support the students' needs throughout the week.
Thank you.
Sure.
How much training have the teachers had to teach online, Dr. Short? Can you talk about professional development?
Dr. Rossi can answer that, going back to March and then what we have lined up this fall. Dr. Rossi?
Sure. Well, prior to March, I mean, we've had professional development training for teachers. I'll be honest with the technology. We've focused our phase one focus was on the secondary teachers. But as you know, when we were put in the situation in March, we did provide professional development training on the platforms, you know, screen recordings, those type of things. We had several teachers who did an excellent job helping us through that and help facilitate that training for us. We had Zoom meetings and virtual meetings scheduled in those 8 days, and teachers did participate, was well participated. And I can't say enough about the teacher leadership that we had coming and participating in that and really stepping up. I will tell you for the fall, for August, we have technology training scheduled for those first 4 days throughout. We have different sessions, a variety of sessions available for teachers. And I will also say that we learned a lot from the spring. We sent a survey to the teachers, so we've used that as feedback as well to help drive some of the professional development that we will offer in August.
Students can bring water bottles, yes?
Yes.
Buildings at Ramsey that don't have windows, is there any plans to address air quality?
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Brown, are you here?
He walked out.
Okay, we'll come back to that one.
Ramsey does have the air conditioning units that have been recently upgraded.
Yeah, they're exchanges.
Yeah.
Please address question on administering standardized state testing that's something that was not done at the end of last school year. I was told it could be not administered online, but what if we are all online?
Currently, right now, the state assessments are still in place for this coming school year. Please stay tuned for anticipation of maybe something different. I can't say for sure. However, messages have been delivered to the Commonwealth Department.
Are we set up in any way to actually do testing? In other words, if we do have a student or staff member, you know, pop a positive test, it comes to us, and we obviously we're going to be following the flow chart, but anywhere in that, you know, are we prepared to do any kind of mass testing for students?
We do not and will not do testing. That is all done by outside professionals.
Are there any plans to address air quality issues at Ramsey where they may not have windows in some of the pods?
How often does the air exchange? I'm sorry. How often does the air exchange?
Air quality rate.
Well, they're all set to a minimum of 15% in each classroom. So I don't have the exact number per hour that is, but the ventilation system brings that. I can get that number. I don't know if it's 8 or 10 times, you know, a day. I'll have to get that. I don't have that exact number.
Okay.
Specific questions. How are we going to make sure things are fair and equitable for students that do require assistance learning?
Ms. Spungard?
As I had mentioned earlier, that will, again, we will meet with the students' individual IEP teams and address those concerns as a team to reflect that learning option.
It's tough to answer those questions because they're so case by case specific. Yeah.
There's a lot of kids that require.
Yeah. I do not envy the task that Heather has ahead of her. it is a mountain, but I think she's going to rise to a fantastic job.
All right, for working parents, you can't get their student in during the day. How is that instruction going to happen?
I misunderstood the question.
So for working parents who are at work, can't log on to the computer with their child, help them get started, help them work through the class on the days that they're at home.
Correct.
How,
They have that option of choosing our Gateway Cyber School, which is totally asynchronous, where all lessons are, as an example, stored in a warehouse where they're able to access. The GATE program does offer that option. However, there may be some times where it's live synchronously. It can be recorded and then shared. So there's flexibility with that.
Teacher asks, why are teachers going in on Wednesday when the buildings are being sanitized? They could do computer work from home and not get in the way of custodians.
Okay, teachers will be reporting on the 17th.
What I'm saying on the Wednesday.
I think it's misunderstanding the purpose of what our Wednesday.
Right.
Bob.
Hey, Bob.
now, Bob,
Hi, Bob. Welcome back.
When we do our cleaning, all of our cleaning is done in the evening. We won't be changing our schedules to come in during the day. Our staff works 3 shifts at the high school and 2 shifts at every other building. So Wednesdays will be open to.
Buildings are clean, sanitized, so as the teachers come in, it offers that full day to connect with the students synchronously, develop meetings, plan together, ask questions to a cohort, get answers from the comfort of their classroom. No interruptions, no students.
So that has nothing in terms of interference with cleaning. I guess they were
That is
thinking
correct.
that Wednesday was the day for sanitizing,
No.
therefore they would be in the way if they're sanitizing.
We will be doing that every night, not just on Wednesdays. That happens every night as it does now. There will be additional cleanings on the Wednesdays, but that'll also happen in the evenings.
Okay.
hey, Bill, I have one follow-up question to, for students who have pre-existing conditions such as asthma, stuff like that. Are they going to be singled out because they cough or have a breathing issue? Like, are we going to be calling their parents every day, hey, your kid coughed today again? Or how do we work through that?
Typically within our health nurses department, some pre-existing conditions are already labeled and listed within the student folder, if you call it that. So the nurse would become aware of that. If a parent has a concern with that, they would simply contact the nurse. The nurse would make that information available to the teacher, who would, of course, wouldn't relay that information to anyone else, but then monitor that and be able to assess.
So would it be a fair recommendation to ask parents who have children that have asthma, allergies or whatever to proactively call the nurse and say, hey, and it's something they normally wouldn't report because they're dealing with it? They know.
Sure.
Okay.
As far as asthma, we do have many parents that list that, the inhalers, or either in the nurse's office or carried on the student. So we do have record of that.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm trying to answer as many as I can while you guys are talking.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this out there. For the parents that are working 5 days, their kids are going to school 2 days. What are they supposed to do with their child if they're young? Are we talking they need to find a daycare, or?
Daycare information will be submitted to families. It's part of the plan to notify parents.
Here's the problem I'm seeing with that I'm hearing is parents are already paying taxes to have their children educated. So if they have to incur another expense for daycare, our daycare is going to be available for these students for 2 days a week. I'm just saying, I know it's out there, and these are some of the questions that we're hearing. So,
And I understand it. And, you know, in my opening remarks, I talked about these issues, one being childcare, economic, educational. But in turn, we have to make sure that, you know, we can't, in all honesty, send 1,200 students back into a classroom 2 feet apart from one another.
I understand. I'm just.
Yeah, and it's the decision is coming from the state level. You know, hands are tied to a certain extent as far as how many kids we can fit in the building.
Well, this just sounds like, I mean, I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound funny when I say this or rude. This is meant with sincerity. I think this is a time for the community to come together. And I know there's a lot of families that have young kids or who work. And this is a time when friends and neighbors and family really need to help each other out. There are definitely, there's a lot of emails here saying, you know, I have to work or I have little kids or how are they going to get on the help desk if they need help? I mean, it would be a lie for us to say that some of these children aren't going to need help at home, because they are. So for the parents that both have to work or can't be there, they're in a really hard situation. And they need the community, their churches, their synagogues, their neighbors, their friends, their family to come around them and help them. And maybe they need to, you know, try to look at some organizations that can support each other through shared rides and carpooling and babysitting and things like that, and just team up together to try to get through this interim. We all want nothing more than to have 5 days a week school. Bill spelled it out pretty blatantly that we can't do that unless it's safe, and we can't do that if we're disobeying guidelines from the state. So we feel for you. We do. You know, my kids are in high school. I don't have to worry about that right now. You know,
We're figuring it out.
but we're figuring it out. You know, I was a single mom when my kids were 9 and 12, so I had a lot of family that helped me out, and I'm so blessed for that. And I really feel that there are a lot of people that don't have that, and those are the people that we really need to look out for. And as a community, we need to recognize that and try to help each other out.
Also, on that subject, helping each other out. It's what I understand the rationale behind the alphabetical situation. I also understand that our elementary schools are already neighborhood oriented, but there are some cases where sometimes we talk about young children, but there's also, you know, older children that need that extra support. Would there be a way on these cohorts that, since the elementaries are neighborhood bound, splitting those by alphabet, but once we go into the middle school and the high school, if we split that up by neighborhood, it would enable neighbors to be able to help neighbors to keep an eye on things at home. I know it becomes more complex because you're doing alphabet here and you're doing neighborhood here, and Bonnie's probably wondering why I'm bringing this up at this point for transportation, but you know, I think it can facilitate some of those needs, because if you have a neighbor that's on a different cohort because of their last name, it's not going to be necessarily helpful to the community.
We've examined that. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable, and I could have further conversations with you regarding that, from my outlook on why I feel it would not serve our students well.
Okay.
I think there may be some equity.
There would be some equity issues.
Equity related issues involved.
So let me tease that out with respect to food. We've got one of the questions here, you know, what about the students who need food? So let me reveal how unsolvable this question is. I talked to Heather Bungard, the special ed director, Alexis Button, STA director, and Bonnie Isha, the transportation director, about and
Pitkin, Meals on Wheels, on what the school district and some community efforts could do in order to get food to some kids who need it. All right, so you can't have the bus driver stop and park the bus, run some food in, drop it off in an apartment complex, and then come out and get in the bus and drive somewhere. So it can't work for the bus drivers to hand out food. It can't work for the Meals on Wheels people because you'd have to give the list of students out to people who have not yet been vetted. And the school district can't give that list out. There would be certain students that wouldn't want it revealed that they're receiving certain foods. So then you have to rely on churches or other organizations to do that. But if they call the school and ask which kids in the neighborhood that need some food, again, our hands are tied. We can't reveal that. So I'm saying all that to ask the folks at home to try to come up with some sort of a protocol that can work to help students that need to have food to get the food, because our hands are tied pretty tightly. We can't do it. Maybe we could collect the food here. Maybe we could have vetted people come and pick up the boxes from time to time. Take the decisions. I don't know. We don't know. We've thought this through. We don't have a solution yet. So like Mary Beth said, let's try to find a way to pull together so that we can come up with some solutions that even if they partially work, that's much better than not having solutions that for any of these problems so that the kids are hungry. Okay? Get in touch with Dr. Short with your suggestions.
Thank you. Short knows, having been on the ministerium interfaith, they are working right now in ways in which they will be working with food when the school district is closed. So they're in that process of doing it. And there are a couple of other programs, Pit Care, it's called Pit Care, and there's a few others that are working to address the situation of food and children not being hungry.
So don't look to the school district to solve all the problems. We can't do it.
Right.
We're here to help. We're happy to do that. But we're looking for great people to step forward and do what you can do.
As I said, the ministerium is in the process of doing that right now.
I just have a couple quick ones left. I got through most of them. Is orientation going to be virtually for incoming kindergarten students, or will be in person? Do you know yet?
We don't have the answer to that yet. We're meeting with our principals tomorrow because if the calendar is passed, some of the orientation dates may change. I don't know that for sure. And how we approach orientation. Looking at the guidelines.
It may be
Yeah.
dependent upon the surveys as well.
Mm-hmm.
You answered some of these questions.
We've been at this 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I was going to recommend maybe to Mary Beth. I think we've done a pretty good job here fielding and answering questions at a rapid fire pace.
We could reconvene if we wanted to
Right.
another day, or
I'm going to make a suggestion. In fact,
Go through the agenda.
yeah, in fact, yeah, I think we can move on to making some of these motions and getting some things passed. Obviously, the line of communication is going to remain open. Any and all questions that need to be asked and answered, the board and the administration is available for email, phone calls, whatever we need to do. We're going to answer every question we can at the best of our ability. We could sit here for the next 3 days and still not get through all of them.
I just want to make sure.
And by then,
I just want to make sure that we're not hamstringing anything that needs to be done because of a decision that needs to be made tonight. I think we really need to prioritize that. I keep glancing at Bill because plexiglass is stuck in my head now. But these are decisions we're going to have to make, whether we think we're going to need it or not, whether it's going to be very expensive or it's not. It's going to be a necessity. The longer we wait, the less chance he has of getting it.
So we were hoping
So I just
for
kind of want to.
tonight and then.
and based on the general plan, and there's ultimately flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely, because, if we have to adjust this plan significantly, we're coming back together to do something similar to this.
That's
It may be in a positive phase, or it may be regression into an official yellow or red phase. So if that happens, we're back here.
Sure, after the surveys are sent out and received back, will we have another meeting to know how everything is playing out? As
Yes,
far as the cohort A, cohort B, is we doing, that type thing?
yes, we would be able to provide the board or the community, not necessarily with names of students.
Right.
But individuals, how many would have selected which 1, 2, or 3 model. Then, if time permits, once we get the master schedule run, I think the board would love to see how it works.
Is everything on this agenda?
I can't see it.
Action item?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
Are you kidding me?
Do you want to address that, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm reading the screen here and I'm reading, are you listening to yourselves? You are so worried about safety, yet you are suggesting we drop our kids off with neighbors, our churches, or daycares. Makes no sense. What doesn't make sense about that? We're not asking people to drop their kids off to strangers on the corner. We're asking everybody to be a little socially responsible, period. Why is it okay to ask our neighbor or community to help or not worry about social distancing then? Nobody said that. They're so concerned about social distancing at school. Everybody has to be concerned about social distancing, and it's comments like these that cause drama that we don't need. You got a whole group of people, you've got a whole administration that's working very hard for the safety of our students.
And succeeding because Don Hall said that no kids have gotten COVID so far.
Thank you. I'm sorry, that's got my attention. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous, and at this point doesn't deserve even to talk about.
So let's talk.
Okay.
Sorry, I just.
All right, so I'm typing here that I'm cutting off questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all. If anyone didn't get their question answered, they can email the board or the administration, and we will still answer any questions that are not unanswered. We answered 112 questions
From that, plus.
from this, plus other ones from the board. Plus, I have to say thank you to Principal Gil Ramsey, because she was answering a ton of questions on her own during the meeting as well. So
Exactly.
thank you. And we're going to move on to section B, financial reports, if Scott is still with us.
I am here.
Hey, Paul, wake up.
All right. Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors approves Section B2 monthly financial statements as listed in Section B at the Tuesday, July 21st, 2020 special board meeting. Specifically, Section B2 monthly financial statements that should read as for June 2020. And also just like to note that Section B1 list of bills for the month of July will be emailed to the board for review on Thursday of this week to begin the review process.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. McIntyre, second by Mr. Williams. Bonnie?
Okay, got that. Thank you.
Acclamation.
Roll call?
All in favor? Aye.
Oh, on. Sorry.
Are we doing a roll call? Okay, Mrs. Cerrucci?
Aye.
Mrs. Delaney? Mr. Gallagher?
Aye.
Mr. Gottman?
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre?
Aye.
Mr. Ritter?
Aye.
Mrs. Warning?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Caleri?
Aye. My name will be on record as an aye.
All right, motion carries. Sorry, John. If we can work that in, we will.
Aye across the board.
It's a good idea.
Delayed, yeah, it is. It was just.
Yeah, I think she was just already in the middle.
Yeah.
All right, section D, personnel agenda, Mrs. Crump.
Thank you, Ms. Cerrucci. Resolved that the Gateway Board of School Directors accepts and approves the personnel agenda items 1 through 4 as listed in section D for the special board meeting of Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. Under resignations, we do have 3 listed. Of those 3, 2 are retirement. So we want to wish for Ron Witeska and Catherine Biondo our best wishes for them and thank them for their years of service. Ron has served 26 years with the district, and Catherine has been in the district for over 22. Under leave of absence, we have 5 to present to you this evening. Under employment, we have 4, 3 of which are teachers, 1 food service worker. The 3 teachers are all teachers who taught as long-term subs last year with the district, and we were able to bring them on this year on a contracted basis. And under volunteers, we have 2.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McIntyre, second by Mr. Williams. Are there any questions?
Congratulations to Ron Wateska. I mean, for all these years of service. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ron.
Yeah, hats off to Ron. I went to school with Ron. Going to be missed here.
Thank you, Ron.
Stay
Always
in good
enjoy
health.
speaking with you daily as he arrives for his shift, and I know Dr. Ross and Dr. Chakey would echo that comment. So, thank you, Ron.
And thank you, Catherine, as well. Okay. Shall
Roll
we-
call.
Yeah, roll call.
Bonnie, do you need a roll call? Is it too hard if we try to do
Acclamation.
an acclamation vote?
No, that'd be fine.
Okay, all those in favor of passing Section D, items 1 through 4, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Bonnie, that was unanimous. Carrie.
Thank you
Voice
very
vote.
much.
Thank you.
Is that okay, John? Section F, administrative report.
Dr. Chakey, secondary education, if you take item number 1.
Item number 1, proposed Gateway School District phase school reopening plan.
Item,
Go ahead,
Special
Heather.
education, Mrs. Bungard.
Can I ask if,
yes, can you just scroll down? I don't have it on my screen. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Not on the screen.
There it is.
There it is.
I apologize. Item number 2, PCB Community Service Agreement to provide student assistant program liaison services for the 2020-2021 school year as depicted in Exhibit B.
Item number 3, exoneration of district real estate tax collectors for the 1920 fiscal year, specifically for the municipality of Monroeville, Patrick Fulkerson, in the amount of $867,798.12. And secondly, for the borough of Pitcairn, Sally DeRobio, in the amount of $134,629.21. Again, for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Item number 4, approve the district's receipt of federal IDEA Section 619 pass-through funds through the Allegheny Intermediate Unit number 3 DART program in the amount of $1,428, and the use of funds agreement and the preliminary budget of expenditures for the 2021 fiscal year is depicted in Exhibit C. Item number 5, approve the district's continued participation and or new participation to join cooperative purchasing groups, agreements, and contracts as applicable, as indicated below during the 2021 fiscal year. Item number 6, approve the district's disposal and or recycling as applicable of damaged and outdated technology equipment for the 2021 fiscal year. Item number 7, award the bid for the new food service department equipment to be utilized at the high school and at the Dr. Cleveland Stewart Jr. Elementary School to Trimark SS Kemp and Company LLC in the total consisting of base bid and alternate bid amount of $127,406 even for the 2021 fiscal year. Item number 8, approve the district's receipt of federal IDEA Part B pass-through funds through the Allegheny Intermediate Unit number 3 in the preliminary amount of $766,125 and the preliminary budget of expenditures for the 2021 fiscal year to be expended on special education teacher salaries. And item number 9, approve the district's purchase of a replacement rooftop air conditioning unit for the Gateway High School from Wayne Krause, Inc. in the amount of $10,746.
Before we move, there is a revised copy of the Section F. A late addition is approve the revised 2020-2021 school year calendar as provided in Exhibit A1. It represents a delay of the beginning of the school year.
That is correct. We would be moving the first student day to September 8th, the day after Labor Day. And I remember seeing some questions upon when the school year would end. Technically, right now we have listed, I believe, June 9th on the document would be the last student day.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. McIntyre. Any questions or discussion?
Roll call,
Bonnie.
Mrs. Delaney. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mrs. Delaney.
She said aye.
She said aye.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher,
Aye.
Mr. Gottman, Mr. McIntyre, Mr. Ritter,
Aye.
Mrs. Warning,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Caleri,
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Very good.
Got some work ahead.
We sure do. All right, that's all for the agenda.
That's it for the agenda.
Okay.
Comments or
I do have
questions?
another motion I'd like to bring to the board.
Okay, Mr. McIntyre, go ahead, sir.
There's been a lot of discussion, obviously, about the rental agreements we've had with our facilities. I don't want to get into the too much of a detailed discussion. We've had a long night. I will just say, what my motion is, I have to make a motion because of the way our policies handled. So I'm going to make a motion tonight that effective immediately, we curtail all indoor rental agreements. In other words, we will not be doing any indoor rentals until this board votes to lift that restriction. Right now, with the current capacity limits of 25 or less and the social distancing, there's not a whole lot of call for it to begin with. I think, with some issues we're having with one of the rentals, I think this curtails that. That particular rental, we do have to take into consideration that we have staff from Gateway, namely our police officers. Part of that contract is that they are on site in that event. And if the event is not following the safety guidelines and mandates that this district is mandated to follow, we are then putting those employees in an unsafe situation. So I personally can't support continuing that.
Okay, so your first motion is to put that on the agenda?
Correct.
So I need to vote to add this to the agenda before we can discuss it.
That needs 6 votes in order to add it to the
And it
agenda.
needs a second.
Is there a second to add that to the agenda tonight? Second by Mr. Gallagher. I'm just waiting for Bonnie to catch up.
Okay, very good. You ready for roll call on adding to the agenda?
Yes.
So we can at least discuss it.
Mr. Gottman,
Aye.
Mr. McIntyre,
Aye.
Mr. Ritter,
No.
Mrs. Warning,
Aye.
Mr. Williams. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
That was an aye from Mr. Williams.
Okay. Mr. Caleri,
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci,
No.
Mrs. Delaney,
Aye.
and Mr. Gallagher.
Okay, motion carries. So now it is on the
I
agenda.
didn't hear Mr. Gallagher's vote.
It was an aye.
Okay, thank you very much. So that was to add to the agenda. Thank you.
A motion to effective immediately end all indoor facility rentals until the pandemic's through, until the restrictions in place for the 25 or less, the masks and all those things, until the board actually wants to vote to bring back the facility rental possibilities. We won't be letting outside parties use our facilities for that duration.
Okay, I need a second before we can have discussion.
Read the motion again, I'm sorry.
It's a motion
To end all indoor rental facilities until the board decides otherwise.
immediately, effective immediately.
Aye. Okay, I'll second. That's what I meant.
Okay, so now it's seconded by Reverend Gallagher and we can have discussion.
Are you saying anything that we have scheduled now for indoors will not be allowed to come in?
For indoor rentals, indoor facility rentals,
And not outdoor rentals.
correct.
Mr.
Outdoor, the restrictions are far less. It's a lot easier to keep mitigation.
Essentially, you're saying based on July 16th mandates that have lessened, or I should say lessened, increased restrictions inside and the school approaching.
My reasoning for this has several layers. One, I've had discussions with Dr. Short. From what I understand, the administration is in favor of this curtailment. My reasoning for this is laid out fairly well in our policy. One policy states the use of school facilities shall not be granted for any purpose which is prohibited by local, state, or federal law. I think it could be argued that while the current occupant has religious exemption from the governor's order, I think it could be argued that this being our policy.
And our attorney's trying to
I was
cut
just
in
going
on
to
you
finish
there.
my argument before you.
Before I
That's fine.
interrupt you.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
I think he was trying to interrupt.
here's, I think you've stated it correctly. I don't want you to single out one tenant over another tenant.
Correct.
You said it. Don't put icing on the cake.
I understand.
Just get a vote. I mean, I think if you start to single out one tenant versus another,
Understood.
or treat a tenant differently than another, we're in trouble. So that's just my caution. So go ahead and finish.
And I appreciate that, and I think that's for the purpose of discussion. But so, this is across the board, there will be no rentals.
Right.
We're not going to accept rentals from one group and not another.
I like what you're saying.
It's just simply, until the COVID is over, I don't think it's safe to have outside parties in the buildings.
Another question. Are you saying the rentals that we have going on right now will be ended?
Yes,
Exactly.
curtailment would be effective immediately.
Even if they are under the 25 state mandated maximum
All
and they're wearing masks and
indoor rentals would be curtailed.
Everything is caught.
So, okay, so you're basically trying to override a higher level of government because the government has already said that some of those events can't take place. I don't even know if we have the authority to do that.
I think that the Department of Education on their site, there's the order of the Secretary of PA, Department of Health requiring universal face coverings, and that's just the title of that. Apply to children and adults while in schools. Department of Ed, yes. This order applies to all students, staff, visitors, age 2 and older while in school entities.
Okay, we don't have any kids in school right now. Can you read that again?
Visitors,
We have no kids in school.
or
It's not a stipulation.
it does not clarify who a visitor is or staff.
The more you talk about this,
Based on what he's saying, I believe that any rental would be, we would be facing an unsurmountable task of enforcing these policies. And so therefore, I think it's best to just end it.
so the motion is what it is, and it's plain and simple. And
Provide a moratorium on rentals.
don't dance around it.
What I would maybe offer up.
I would like to say that if they follow the protocols, then we should honor our contract. If they don't follow the protocols, then they violated the contract.
How do we know who we're paying to verify and enforce that they're following? You know what I mean?
I don't know. I don't care. That's not part of the discussion.
That is the exact discussion.
My response was, if they follow the protocols, they should be allowed to enjoy the benefits of the contract that we've made to them. If they don't, then they have repercussions.
That's
What
not the motion that was made.
That's not the motion. And what protocols are you talking about?
I don't care about the protocol.
Right.
Let's keep this simple. You're continuing to try to add tenants into this discussion, and this motion does not single out or have anything to do with any one tenant, whether they follow the protocol or they don't. Rick's motion is very simple. Keep it simple right now and vote on it.
Are you suggesting we don't allow board members to have any discussion?
Sure, yeah, they can, but I'm just gonna caution, that's all.
I would like maybe an amendment, if it maybe makes this a little bit easier or palatable,
It's not gonna.
to where instead of effective immediately, could we at least say, 1 week prior to the first day of school, we don't want to have outside parties entering our buildings and for any reason.
Okay, you're offering that as an amendment.
Yes.
Now the question is.
Rather immediately. I mean, that's
Rather
not-
than effective immediately, we move it to
1 week prior to school.
1 week prior to the start of school,
Which is June 8th.
which is June, no. That's the
September.
last day.
September.
I'm not kidding. It's
Essentially-
September 8th.
September 1.
So 1 week prior to that,
9/8 is the first.
we would no longer be having any indoor rentals.
You're saying September 1st, start of school,
Yes.
September 8th?
Yes.
Well, why don't we just say?
Why don't we just reevaluate it?
Why don't we just have any rental come before the board and the board can just vote it down?
No, because you can't do that, because you're getting into a legal issue. You can't pick and choose who you rent your facilities to. That's discriminatory. That's illegal. You can't do that.
I do have a question about the amendment. Of course, that's not the second on the amendment yet, so, yeah. Since I second the original motion, can I speak to his amendment?
Well, all I know is there's a
Yes,
motion.
you can speak to it, Robert Gallagher.
Okay.
Amend.
My thought is the thought of once school commences.
Oh, he seconded it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Once the week prior to school commencing, we have other activities that go on within the building. If marching band comes back on August 1st, we have athletes in and out of the building. I'd have to reconsider my second of that with that amendment being put in.
Well, those would continue.
Yeah.
But this would eliminate
Rentals.
the outside, the rental.
No, I'm not saying that they won't continue.
So
I'm
you're saying
saying
that
if it's a safety protocol, because
Right.
students will be in the building, students will be in the
Correct.
building, possibly effective August 1st.
Correct.
All right, given the complexity of the issue that is not so cut and dry, I would make a motion to table, and we put this on the agenda for next month. Is there a second to table?
Say that again, next month is when? Name the date, please.
August 7th.
The what?
7th?
Our next meeting is August
11th.
11th. Thanks, Bonnie.
So that's, it's 20 days from now, is that right?
Today is July
2
21st.
days from now.
Okay, there's a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call Bonnie to table.
Was that Scott Williams?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Okay, table. Very good. Thank you. Mr. McIntyre. Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Caleri.
Aye.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Aye.
Mrs. Delaney.
Aye.
Mr. Gallagher.
No.
Mr. Gottman.
Aye.
Okay,
Motion carries to table.
motion carries 7-2. We'll put that on the agenda. That will allow us time to discuss amongst ourselves, amongst the community. We understand that there are some issues. We're not taking those concerns of the community lightly. We understand that. So we will continue to discuss and address and research. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.